Okay.
Okay. So what are your initial impressions of the technology?
I think it's very clever. I think that it has I think there's a difference here between whether the technology works and where it will be placed. And perhaps in our conversation, those two silos can be addressed separately because they're not necessarily intuitively interlinked. If you were to ask me, do I think this technology just intuitively would work, my answer is yes, I believe it would work. If the question is, where would it be placed from a commercial point of view, I think that would be a longer discussion. Again, I'm not saying it can't be, but I think it strategically one has to really think about that a lot more.
Okay. So let's unpack both of those. But before we do, when you say where placed, can you, just so I could have it circulating in the back of my mind as we talk, what do you mean by that?
Well, I mean, the bottom line is essentially how would this device be profitable? What would be the return on investment, and to get to that point of having the best chance at return of investment, it has to be positioned and developed properly. So it's all about product placement, and I think that's the bigger question.
I see. Okay. All right. Well, that's very helpful. So let's. You thought it was a clever device. Why clever?
Well, I mean, I think that it is. It's something that will allow us to be more efficient. Now, just as a product itself, we're just talking about the first silo. We're not talking about the second silo. I just want to make it clear. As a product itself, it certainly would allow people to be a lot more efficient. It would allow for anesthesia. I think there's good evidence that we see that when you go ahead and do cryotherapy on a part of the organ, there is going to be anesthesia that's going to be there as a result of the freezing temporarily, and it will last long enough. So all of those things make it very clever. It's not something that anybody else that I know has thought of. The part that I don't know is I have no doubt that once the freezing occurs, that will provide anesthesia. What I don't know, frankly, is you would still use the Q-tip, I presume, on the conjunctiva prior to putting this device on there. Because if you just put the device on and start freezing, that will really hurt. So I presume what you would do is still put the Q-tip on there and go ahead and freeze, and then go ahead and go through the process. Now, the questions that I have are the following. One is, would the topical anesthetic or the Q-tip that one uses be sufficient to alleviate the sensation that one gets from the freezing? And that sensation is more like sort of like a one of those Slurpee headaches that one gets. Those ice cream headaches, that kind of thing. So would that be sufficient? And the answer is I don't know. The second is, because I told you that 90% of my colleagues really don't do the subconj injection like me and have to go back and forth, and they simply put the Q-tip there, will they say, well, hell, if I'm going to use the Q-tip anyway, I might as well just leave the Q-tip a little bit longer here and just do what I normally do rather than pay for this device and pay for the disposables and go through all this. Those are the things that I don't know the answer to. But will it work if you can put the Q-tip there long enough to help with the initial freezing, and will the freezing cause the anesthesia locally? The answer is I think it will.
Mm-hmm. What would you need to see in terms of data or evidence to make you comfortable with respect to that freezing sensation?
Well, again, and I'm glad you phrased it that way, and I'm going to keep saying this because I don't want to confuse the two. We're still talking about the first silo, so we're still looking at this as a scientific experiment as opposed to one